All right, so we should be recording. Is it recording? It says recording. Okay, good. All right, everybody. Hopefully you could see my screen here.
Gene needs access to the Fed 7. What kind of access?
Everyone can hear.
So I'm looking for Semaphore or Semaphore December, and right now.
All right, so welcome everybody. This is Coaching Agile Journeys. I'm Jeff Kors. We have co-hosts and our Coaching Agile Journey leadership team, Isaac Garcia, Heidi Araya, Lori Townsend, and Mark Kruth. Just to give you a little bit of background on what we do here, we're a group of volunteers. We all came together to continue learning, growing, and helping others. We do have a YouTube channel, and it has a video, a little bit more about what we're about and what we aspire to do. We're committed to living our Agile journey to the fullest, and most importantly, I think we're committed to bringing together some of the best practices we could find and sharing them with other people to help their Agile journey. We are dedicated to finding highly focused topics, and when I say highly focused topics, pretty serious about that because I just went through and edited our YouTube channel, and we've been doing this for a year and a half now. I think we're at 22 or 23 sessions, and we haven't yet to cover the same topic twice. So we're definitely trying to find very unique content. Our sponsors. So we can't do this without having some sponsorship for our website and for the things that we do and our technical, like the Zoom that we're on right now. So first, we'd like to thank Teal Mavericks. Mark Kruth, who's one of our leader, he basically runs the Teal Mavericks. Their coaching, consulting, and training company focused on radically changing the way people live and work. Mark is absolutely amazing, very inspiring guy, and they do great things. Teal Mavericks is giving a Management 3.0 two-day weekend workshop in Chicago, Illinois, June 16th and 17th. I don't know if anybody's familiar with Management 3.0. I think this is a Jürgen Apollo, and he wrote a book, Management 3.0, very popular, very good stuff. And then we have tealmavericks.com. That's where you'll go to get more information, and a promo code of CAJ for 10% off your ticket. All right. Thanks to ScrumDo. ScrumDo is our sponsor that brings us Zoom. Like I said, we need these sponsors. They help us out, and they help provide this platform and venue. They're built-in support for Scaled Agile Framework, SAFe. I've used ScrumDo before. It's really great. Anybody can go to scrumdo.com and give it a try. Their portfolio-level Kanban and solution planning boards, Slack integration, multi-dimensional risk management, and out-of-the-box time series view like Agile Gantt chart. They got really easy, really good stuff, very, very intuitive and user-friendly. So I'd encourage people to go check ScrumDo out. And like I said, it's good for us to have some sort of a way to host these events and for us to invest our time to bring in new speakers and new topics and host on a digital platform. So if you're ever interested in helping us out and giving us a tip, we actually use those tips or that money or that investment to put it back into the technology that helps drive everything that we do so we could bring you this content. Now, without further ado, I met Harald over, what was it? It was National Retrospective Day, and he brought this topic up. And this is such an amazing topic. I'm not really going to get into all the verbiage that's on here, but if trust, team safety is an issue, or you want to find tools or a way that you can help elevate this or expose it and improve upon it, Harald has got just what you need. So I am actually going to stop sharing and let Harald take over.
Sounds good. Hi, everybody. let me just see if I can, just for shits and giggles, can everyone just show their video for a second? Just see some faces real quick. One screenshot of faces. Who are we seeing today? All right, look at this. Lots of nice people. All right, hello everybody. All right. Just shout out real quick if you can, maybe where you're from, unmute your microphone for 1 second, just location-wise, where you're from. Let's just do a few of those.
Colorado.
Florida.
Connecticut.
California.
Santa Monica.
Berlin.
Seattle.
Very cool. Awesome. Wow, it's very distributed all over the place. Okay, so let me start my slides now, and I'll see how this works. And I'm hoping you're not seeing the presentation. Are you seeing? You are?
Yeah, we're seeing the wrong view.
All right, let me try one more time. Now let's do it this way. And now?
You're good.
All right, cool. So let's start from the beginning. So I'm going to go through a few slides today. We're going to talk about team safety. And team safety, I call it the team's secret superpower. Sometimes I call it the organization's secret superpower. It's one of these secret kind of recipes, the secret sauce that a lot of people are missing when they do Agile in different ways, and why this is so crucially important today. Okay, so let's get started. I usually do this with my colleague, Phil Mark Rossetti. He's not here today. Quickly about me, and then I'll get to my Agile coaching journey in a really brief moment too.
Sure.
Yes.
If I can interrupt for a second, there is something on your screen, maybe in the background or conflicting image there, the box, yeah, that whatever just closed there.
It's gone.
Yeah, you're good. Oh, thank you. Sorry.
Good. No worries. Thanks for pointing that out. Otherwise, we would have that box the whole time. Okay, so I started my journey about 10 years ago. After I studied computer science in Germany, I came to LA. Started off as an engineer, but then briefly, the company I was working for also had some demands for project management. So I did kind of like both a little bit, engineering and project management. And then I drifted even more into project management. And then at one point, a consultancy came in and transformed the organization into an Agile shop. Unfortunately, the coding shop didn't last too long, but then I joined the consultancy to help work with clients to do more Agile implementations, either transformation work or pilot projects or just coaching itself. And focus on delivering, creating awesome teams. That's kind of like where I come from the shortest version possible, maybe. So some companies I worked with, Grindr, Fox Broadcasting Company, Loot Crate, and more recently Riot Games. So how this all came about, I just want to mention real quick. I was working at Loot Crate together with my colleague here, Phil Mark. And we had an issue where when we had ceremonies or events that they're called now in Scrum, like a retrospective, and we noticed not everyone was really contributing, not everyone was really speaking up, not everyone was giving their fullest to the ceremony, and we were thinking, okay, how about we figure out a way to debunk what's going on in a really pleasant way that's not threatening for anyone. So before I get to that, just real quick, I want to mention that anything I'm going to say right now is based off a lot of backed materials that I found through the web, a lot of really interesting research work, and also I'm highly inspired and influenced by Stephen M. Smith from EMC Consulting. He actually created, and by the way, all those slides will be available later if you want them, and there's in the appendix all the references, so if you don't have to take notes if you don't want to. He created a game, basically, and he published an article back in 2006 in crosstalk. Can you also see my camera? I'm not sure if you only see, you see my camera. So I printed this out. This is from 2006. And in crosstalk, there's a piece called team safety, and he talks about team safety. So I read this and I created a enhanced version of his format. So I give him a lot of credit for everything that we're going to talk about today. Also, I want to talk about that I'm not a psychologist, so I use techniques from psychology, but I'm not necessarily a practitioner in this space. Okay, so I think before we get into the more of it, let's just start playing something. And the way I work with team safety is I like to measure in a very quantitative way where we're at with team safety. So I usually do these sessions in a physical space. So I have like a card deck that I can show you right here. It's actually a real card game. Let me just show you right here. Ta-da! So it looks like this. It's a custom created card deck that I built to work with teams. And when we have a session like a retrospective, I would do this exercise at the very beginning to gauge like what are our safety levels right now in our session. So maybe to illustrate best how this works, I'll need 5 volunteers to play with me to simulate a team. So can I have 5 volunteers to work with me?
I can do that.
Okay, what's your name?
Sunit.
Sunit, okay.
Darlene also raised her hand.
Yes, I can volunteer.
Okay, Sunit, Darlene, and then I need, who else?
Yes, Anna and Lori, we can volunteer as well.
Anna and Lori, okay.
Yeah.
And I need one more, 5 people.
Azza.
Azza, okay. Okay, so we're going to create a fake team right now just for the sake of the exercise, but imagine you're together as on a real team. And envision for the sake of the exercise, your team that you're on right now. Maybe you're with other Scrum Masters or maybe a functional group right now. So imagine you're with that group, and let's say I want to ask you one single question, and you have to provide me the equivalent value back as an answer. And the question I'm going to ask you is, how safe do you feel with the team space? So the team space consists of the members of the team that builds that team space. If you answer with 5, then it would mean everything is discussable without filtering. If you answer with 4, almost everything is discussable without filtering. 3 would be most things are discussable without filtering. 2 is almost nothing is discussable without filtering. And 1 would mean nothing is discussable without filtering. So maybe in the chat, if you can maybe just pull up the chat for those volunteers who want to participate, give me your feedback right now. What would you say? And this is just made up. I get this. It doesn't have to be accurate. So what would you choose in your team right now? Okay, I got 3 answers so far. I'm still seeking out 2 more. So Anna, I think. Azza is good. Okay.
Answer 1.
Okay, I forgot 4 answers. One is left. Sunit, we have Darlene, we have Anna. Who was my last one? Lori, I think. Are you still there?
Yes, yes, she's here. I'm typing for her right now.
Okay, type for her.
Okay.
Then. Awesome.
There you go.
Okay, cool. So now our results are in, and this is kind of like how I would create a capturing of that. So I would capture the team name, then the team average we would calculate. If someone wants to bust out their calculator real quick and help me out, what's the average for that? And then the distribution of how many different values that I get, the date, and then maybe some caveats like if someone is sick on the team, if someone joined, someone left, all those things would influence the outcome of the measurement.
2.8.
2.8. No, 2.8, really? Oh, that's low. We'll get to that. Now, here's the thing. The way we just played it through the chat system, I can see who provided what kind of value, right? So that might be a little tricky because it's not really a safe space. What I recommend doing is find a way to do this in an anonymous format. So you don't know who's playing what game. So I see there's a 1 right now. That person might feel very threatened to throw in an actual 1 if this was a real scenario, because if you feel like nothing is discussed without filtering, there might be good reasons for that, and you might feel very unsafe to say that in front of the team you're playing with. So with the card game that I have here, we play it in a way where we do not expose who's playing what. We do it anonymously. So we flip it on the backside, and we just play it with the anonymous kind of format onto the center of the table. And then we shuffle it a little bit so we don't know who did what, flip it, and then we can see, just from a team point of view, what the team safe space is and not the individuals. So if you have remote teams, there might be a remote kind of format for that to do anonymous voting. There's some tools. I used to use Mural. If you're familiar with Mural, it's more like a product management kind of tool. But that's a great tool if you can, in a way, also afford it. It's a more per seats kind of tool. But we use that on a distributed team across 3 continents to do this exercise in an anonymous way, because we could do anonymous voting. Okay, maybe planning poker, good thought. So if you do it an anonymous way, you're building up a safe space to facilitate the exercise itself. And I find this is crucially important, just to gauge the numerical values of where we're at. Okay, so we're going to talk about the whole cycle, how this whole works, and we just did the first step. So the first step was purely a team safety check on the very top, with safe facilitation as a root for that, so no one feels threatened to actually be true to their what they want to play. On the one side, it's a feedback loop, it's anonymous, it's fun, and it's a quantitative measure. Now, by doing that, you create awareness. And we just have awareness, okay, our team space is at a 2.8 at the moment. So out of 5.0 as a max and 1.0 as the lowest, we're kind of like in the middle. Not too great, I'd say. And we have 1.1 and 1.2. Those are more like the outliers usually. We have people who are probably in desperate need to get some help. So just by creating that awareness is step 1. And so what do you guys think happens when you just create the awareness alone? Just give me some thoughts here. What happens? What do you think happens?
Well, people start thinking about things they never thought about before, perhaps.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing that I find is after the exercise is over, it still is in their heads. They still like process it over time to figure out, okay, why are we so low, or why are we so high, or why are we the way we are, like as a team. So what is that? What's going on actually? And sometimes I've only done the awareness exercise itself, so just playing this quick card game. And over time, I could see things going up, and not because people are gaming the system. There's no motivation to game the system. It's just purely through awareness that they might start changing behaviors by having that awareness alone.
I have a question. Is it okay to ask questions throughout the presentation? Sure. Okay, just a question I had about this. So the challenge we have sometimes in teams, for what I've seen, is it's not necessarily that people aren't speaking up as far as the team feeling safe, but that they're speaking up in ways that are not constructive or could be, you know, in an unsafe manner, right? In an attacking mode, or so they could say, I feel, you know, let's say we have two members in a team of 5, and they are very outspoken, and so they would pick 5 and 5, both of them. So your average will be high, but that doesn't mean that the team is feeling safe at all, because they might be the reason or one of the main reasons as to why the other 3 don't feel safe to talk. So how is this exercise in covering that case?
So that's totally a valid point. I've seen that actually happen when the more like the dominant personalities in conversations, they tend to drive in more of the higher numbers. I'm not sure if everyone on the team feels safe when that occurs. That might be a special case that you have, and we could probably dissect that a little bit further. But usually what happens is there's an imbalance. It's what I found working with several teams, where the outspoken ones, the maybe extroverts, not, you know, just roughly saying the ones that feel very comfortable saying whatever they want to say, they are measuring very high, where it could impact others on a team negatively, and they might score more on the lower side.
Right.
So maybe try the measurement on your team and see if everyone is on a 5 and it's just a big fight on that level, that everyone's just trying to have their opinions heard, or is it actually a huge discrepancy where there's a big imbalance between some people throwing in 5, some people throwing in very low numbers?
Yeah, because the last comment I was just gonna say is because the challenge I've seen happening in that particular example, it's more so with those very outspoken people who are not, because when you say number 5, you can talk about whatever, it says unfiltered, right? So there's no limit. The problem is that that's almost not solving the problem in those cases, because they already do that to the point where in other Agile classes that I've gone, it actually, for what I've heard, and I don't know what you think, but they actually encourage so that retrospectives are focusing on processes, improvements, and in more objective ways versus attacking a person, for example. So if put number 5, and let's say everything they do each time for retrospectives is bring up a name of a person, they could raise it to 5 and 5, right? But that doesn't produce an environment that is safe for the team.
Yeah, I would recommend doing a measurement and seeing what happens, just to create the awareness of where your team's at. And then you can see, because maybe there's a lot of assumptions going on right now. And if people actually play what they really feel in terms of these numbers, you might get a good gauge of that. But we'll get to more of those topics, I think, as we go through the slides. And let's maybe continue the conversation at the end, because I think there's more to discover there too. Is that cool? We might touch on more topics.
No problem.
Okay, cool. Okay, great. All right, so awareness alone is one thing you can do. It can also already just be very effective at that stage. Now, I chose this game. I mean, there's all kinds of different exercises you can do. And the main reason is, one, it's fun because it's a card game. It's something that's very easily to do in the physical space. It can also be simulated in virtual spaces. It's very low cost. It doesn't take much time. As you just saw, it can, once a team does it a few times, they can do this within a minute or two. And you get a lot of value back, because now you have an understanding of where the levels of the team safety is on the team level. You can create additional things that we're going to go into in a second. So one distinction I want to make real fast is we're talking about teams here right now. So we're not talking about other levels of, like, how do you feel with your department, for instance, or your division, tribe, whatever you want to call it, your organization. So the larger group, essentially, work group. It's not also about your manager. That can also be another thing. I've heard a lot of people say, like, I don't feel safe with my manager. But that's a different level. I'm not talking about that right now. I'm just talking about the team level. Also, some people don't feel safe with the organization as a whole, like as a, maybe there's some cultural things going on an organizational level where on the team level, they're fine. So when you do the exercise, I'd also make sure that it's clear that people don't mix up the different opinions. So just stay on the team level. That's a defined team. And how do you feel with that team, not other factors. Now, I want to go briefly from the exercise into a little bit more of a theories behind this. So why is team safety so important, and the emphasis on team in this case? And if you're familiar with how organizations are developing and how we are entering more and more organizations are adapting to the knowledge age, you would understand that from the 20th century kind of organizational structures, we're moving out of these kind of like bureaucratic teams into agile teams. And there's a huge difference in the way organizations work in these two different ways. Steve Denning, that I'm referencing here, he wrote an article in Forbes in 2016 called Explaining Agile. If you know him, he's got a fantastic, he does a radical leadership. He wrote a book a few years ago. His current book is called Age of Agile. And he's a huge contributor to different media outlets, and Forbes is being one of the predominant ones. So if you look him up, you'll find all kinds of great information around Agile. And he explains this concept here in his article back in 2016, where when you move from bureaucratic teams, which are more like top-down individual responsibilities and have little interactions with other teams, you're moving into a space in the knowledge age with agile teams where you have autonomous teams, cross-functional teams, and a lot of interaction between the teams. So even the past teams, weren't really teams. They were actually just more like pseudo teams or organizational teams, but didn't have the same impact as what you would think of a definition of a team is in an agile context. Nowadays, this is like the most successful companies are building up these agile teams as a network structure. So to put a lot of emphasis on the team is very important. And to build up high functioning teams is crucially important for the success of a company. You might have heard of Project Aristotle out of Google. Most people who live in the agile space have heard about this before. I'm just going to touch brief on this. And basically, Aristotle is, like the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. So meaning that if team members contribute in a collaborative fashion, that's more effective than individual contributions alone, more in an isolated fashion. Sunit, would you mind muting your microphone? I'm getting some back.
Sorry.
Cool, thank you. In Project Aristotle was a project that Google did a few years ago, and they wanted to figure out what makes a team effective at Google. And they started on their journey in 2012 to figure this out. There's a great article in the New York Times that was published in February 2016, talking all about the backgrounds and the research done on this. And they examined 180 teams to figure out what does a really strong team, what makes it. And what they discovered is it's not necessarily like who is on the team. Like you don't need the best domain experts on a team and put them all together and that will create the best team, or the people who also have hobbies together will be the best team or something like that. So it's not really who is on the team. What they discovered is how the team interacts, or how the team members on the team interact. That was the most interesting outcome of this study. And the one and far most important piece was what they called psychological safety. And to go quickly into the definition of psychological safety, Amy C. Edmondson, she defines it as a psychological safety as describes the perceptions of the consequences of taking interpersonal risks in a particular context, such as the workspace. Now, I want to emphasize the perception part. So the perception of consequences. So even if there may not be any consequences for taking an interpersonal risk, just having that perception is the problem. It's not the actual risk itself. So if you have a perception that there might be consequences for doing something or saying something, behaving in a certain way, that's impacting your psychological safety. And that's one of the root causes of what is making collaboration really not so impactful. Another, this is research that goes way back many decades. Another researcher, Kahn, describes it as feeling able to show and employ oneself without fear of negative consequences of self-image, status, or career. So kind of like just be yourself without having the fear of having consequences for that. And I found this is one of the topics that's been resonating for the last few years really strongly. I think you might see a lot of talks on this at Agile conferences. If you go to the Scrum, the Global Scrum gatherings or the Agile Alliance conference, you'll find these kind of topics coming up over and over and over again. So you can read this on the New York Times, but also if you go to Rework on the Google's website, you can read a lot more about this in the backgrounds of this stuff. So super interesting. Just a few more mentions, and then we get back into the exercise I do. So what I recommend also reading if you are more new to this topic, essentially it's a lot about psychological safety and communicating between team members. And if you're familiar, for instance, with the power of habit, there's a great story in there about the company Alcoa, the American aluminum company, where I think in 1987, a new CEO, Paul O'Neill, came to the company, and the company hasn't been doing so well over the years. There was a lot of injuries on site. They work with melted metals and stuff like that. And he determined that the one thing we're going to focus on is safety at the company to actually bring the company back into profits and also reduce injuries on site. And by putting, there's more like habit mechanics behind it, but by focusing on safety alone, not only did people injuries go down because they implemented different systems to prevent injury in the first place, they also, by doing that, they optimize their processes because they're now looking at how do you deliver on what needs to be delivered? How does it work? How do we optimize in a way that's safe? And by doing that, they found ways to streamline their whole process. So they made safety a pillar in their whole strategy, actually. And it turned out that profits also went back up by focusing on that. If it comes to communication, I recommend Crucial Conversations. It's a 2-day course you can take, and you can get certified on it. That's really understanding how you can communicate with one another, and also building up safe spaces. There's a big chapter in there on how to build safe spaces within participants in communication. Also, nonviolent communication, if you've heard about that, it's also sometimes called compassionate communication, where people act in certain ways because essentially their needs are not met. You start off with like understanding a scenario or an observation, or more like an objective observations. Then you understand what feelings you're feeling from the scenario, and then you learn to understand what kind of needs you have that are not met, and that's causing a lot of these problems. And then the fourth step is to then make a request on how you want to change it and make sure that your needs are actually met. And this is where compassionate and empathy start to become very important if you work on a team level, to make sure that everyone's needs are also met. It's not just about the delivery. It's not about yourself. It's also about making sure everyone is feeling okay on the team. And how do you contribute to that conversation? A few more mentions here, but I recommend these 8 books to start off with. There's a lot of great stuff in here, and that gets you very far as an Agile coach. Okay, so now we did this one snapshot earlier with the card game. So we have an average, what did we have? 2.8 was our average. So if you can imagine, we had this one snapshot in time. This is today's date. If you do that over time, you can then see how your team's progressing. You can see if they're diving, if it's getting more unsafe, or if they're staying on a higher levels. This is an actual measurement that I took at Loot Crate with one of the teams, and we were pretty good. We were in the 4 to 5 space, so that's a pretty healthy spot to be in. Sometimes you don't have to do any actions. Just by giving me this number, it gives me a good understanding of the team is pretty okay. I don't have to worry about them. If they drop down to like the 2s or under 2, then we're probably in a very critical space, and we might have people leaving, or other kinds of huge problems could occur if the numbers drop to be down. And also I can see trend lines. If I can see the trend is dropping, then also I need to step in as an Agile coach and make sure I can help here. Now this is one team. At Loot Crate, we actually convinced the leadership to scale with this. And we trained other Scrum Masters and project managers to also start measuring on their teams. So what happened is, and it's kind of hard to see, it's a little dark, but basically we expanded it to 15 teams. 2 of them were deprecated, so we didn't fully have that at the end. But overall, we had, you can see 2 outliers actually. You can see on the 5, we have 1 line up there. So 5.0 was like, okay, a little suspicious, but we tested them, and it turns out, yes, that's actually true. And then you can also see that there's a 1 between the 2s and the 3. There's 1 line there. So that team needed a little bit more help too, to figure out what can we do to help them. But overall, the health was pretty good.
Darlene had a question. It was, can Team Safety Tracker be an indicator for organizational health? Have you seen that?
So we kind of like did teams individually and then just summarized all the teams, and that gave us a good sense maybe of what's going on. Because if every individual plays in an anonymous way, just to play it, so we can get a good snapshot without any threat or any kind of, any kind of fear of consequences, we should probably I would say we should probably get a pretty good grasp of how things are going. Let's see, there's another question real quick. Self-reporting of 5, exactly. So the 5.0 team right here, this is like, what's going on here? I was actually on that team. So if we say everything is discussable without filtering, let's put that to the test. All right, so now I did the exercise of let everyone can say what everyone else should do a little bit better. That's a little touchy, right? That topic is like, if I'm an engineer, I'm going to say what I think the product owner should be doing a little bit better on. And if I'm at a 5.0 level, then that should be not a problem to talk about, which is super healthy. Or if, let's say a QA engineer needs to tell the engineer to stop doing these crazy mistakes, if we're on a 5.0, then yeah, we should be able to say that without any concerns here. So I put them to the test. I asked some hard questions, and maybe the questions that really matter on an Agile team too, like the real tough ones, and we're not going to beat around the bush. Let's get to the real point. So if you have high levels, that should be no problem. Okay, so overall, oops, wrong way. So overall, you can see we started off with a fewer teams in the 3 to 4 area, and we boosted them up into the 4 to 5 area. And all the other teams were also held in that space. So, there's ups and downs a little bit, but if it's generally in that ballpark, then you're pretty good off. I think that's not a bad space to be in. Okay, let's see. So continuing with the safety cycle. So we did awareness, and now if they're lower, then you probably want to start figuring out, okay, why is that low? What's going on the team? And there's different ways to do that. And you can also skip the why. You can just do straight interventions. So what I mean with that is, like, let's say if the team levels are relatively low, it might be a good idea to do like a team outage, or some kind of like lunches or dinners, or some kind of activity that is totally independent of the workspace, just to create better connections with the people. That can be an immediate intervention that's kind of common in the workspace, but people don't really see it as that maybe. But those are really healthy mechanisms to build up better relationships with team members on the team. So you can skip the whys, but if you want to know why, then let's look into that. And I'd say let's play again if you guys want to do that. So this time, I want you to, we're going to do this exercise. We're going to do, so what adds to team safety and what takes away from team safety? So I'm going to start with on the left side. So if you think back to your teams, and maybe you think of a good team, like a really good team. Maybe the team you're on right now is really great, or a team that you used to work on was amazing. Or if you envision a team you've observed before that they were amazing, it doesn't even have to be an Agile team, could be a sports team or whatever. But from your point of view, like what is it that adds to the feeling of safety? You feel more safe when what? So try to complete that sentence. I feel more safe when what happens? Like what occurs, what behaviors, what language? When management is not around, okay? All right, let's keep going. Let's collect a few, and then we'll parse through a few ideas here.
So when you know each other on a personal level.
Okay, yeah, that's another one. Let's throw a few in the chat, I guess, so we can just all see what you guys are thinking. When I work closely with someone, that means maybe over a longer period of time, maybe even, or also like a lot of communication, a lot of contact points, right, throughout the day, maybe. Is that what it means, closely? I think so. So you build up trust over time. When I'm not judged, right? That could be a good one. And it depends on how judgment occurs and how it works. Because it might be sometimes confused with feedback. Feedback is great. You know, that's the whole idea of getting fast cycles, feedback cycles in Agile. So feedback is great, but if it's in a way, if it's delivered in a way that's it's like a judgment, then you might be feeling less safe, and maybe it's not a justified judgment either. Maybe it's just a strong opinion. You feel more safe when improved skills are good. I don't know, Rusty, what do you mean with improved skills are good? Could you elaborate quickly on that? If possible. If you can't, then we'll skip that one. Jeff, you said
improv. Improv, like improvisational. Maybe.
Improv skills, right? So it's kind of like not sticking to the plan, not sticking to everything that you think. Maybe you have to improvise a little bit, right? So that feels great, you know, when people do that. Maybe it's a little bit in the line of being vulnerable, because if you improvise, you might just, someone is being vulnerable because they don't know if this is going to work or not. That could be another way to add safety. Atmosphere is casual, so less formal, maybe more casual. That could be helpful. Okay, good. So we got some great responses. And I do this exercise actually all over the place, wherever I go. I've done this at a few meetups. And one of the things that I get a lot back, one of the answers that I get back is when people cut me off. When I talk and I get interrupted, bam, I couldn't finish my sentence, right? That's something that, oh, I flipped it. That's actually something that people do not feel safe with. Sorry, I was already on the right side of this chart. Yes. Creative liberty and playful openness. Good, good. Very good. Okay, so that's good. That's a good piece. Let's do the other one. Let's see what happens. You feel when what happens, and these are more the painful ones, right? That's like you can probably imagine a few of those. I already gave one away, so don't use that one. Let's give that a second. You feel less safe. And I see performance review time. So remind yourself, we're in the context of the team itself. So performance reviews are often, maybe not always, but often an organizational kind of thing through people and talent or HR or what are they called. So just remember to stick in the domain of the team itself. Motives are unclear. Yeah, the motivation. Why is this happening? Not aligned. Secrecy, yeah, maybe like closed door sessions or behind the back conversations about stuff you should be involved in, maybe. Yeah, when people have not learned how to be vulnerable with each other, right? Yeah, that's kind of like they have also a fear then. If they can't be vulnerable, there's some fear going on their side as well. Change in plans at the last minute, that can make you feel less safe. Okay. People yelling, screaming, yelling, like maybe inappropriate behavior, maybe some would call it. Maybe communicating ineffectively is the way maybe I would call it. It's not resonating. Whatever he's yelling or she's yelling is not resonating, so it's ineffective communication essentially. Cliques have formed. Oh, okay, so like micro teams on a team, right? 2 or 3 people doing their own things, not including the others, stuff like that. Yeah, instability of the environment, people or culture. That could be like if you do maybe, if your team's not steady, if you don't have like a fixed team, it's a lot of ins and outs, like more like the team's being reshuffled through management, for instance, stuff like that. That could maybe be impacting. Okay, great. So I think we got a great set of stuff again, and we're gonna use this again. So this is great feedback, and thank you for participating. Okay, yeah, those are. By the way, I'll get to that at the end. It's gonna be interesting. Let's move on. Where's my mouse? I lost my pointer. Hold on 1 second. Okay. There we go. Okay, so there's different ways to collect this information. And what I do as a coach is either I have just team member interviews, interviews being following a very specific format, which I usually do this over lunch or some kind of coffee break. I actually interview them with techniques that I learned from ethnographers to get into the depth of what's actually going on. One-on-one coaching sessions itself, like there might be blockers that people are experiencing, and we'll work through those to figure out what's going on. Team coaching, also like on just having the whole team together and help with coaching activities there. Lean coffee can also be helpful on team safety, like use the topic team safety as a lean coffee topic. I call them better retrospectives. So maybe focus on the formats of your retrospectives. Maybe you can find playful ways to express kind of things that are going on the team by using better retrospectives. And there's a great book, do I have it here? Agile Retrospectives by Esther Derby and Daniel Larson. If you haven't looked at one, check that one out. It's a fantastic book with all kinds of great insights of how to do better retrospectives. Surveys, I don't personally like surveys so much. I often find them very impersonal. But if you have to get feedback from a large scale, that might be very helpful to do in that format. So yeah, what I do with this exercise is if I get, this exercise we just did, you can do this anonymously on the team too, like through a survey, for instance, and then you would kind of like plot that out onto, let's say, a wall or somewhere that's visible for everyone. And then you can start thinking about, what do you do personally to add or take away from team safety? Where do you find yourself? What kind of activities do you find yourself doing on the team? And that can create another level of awareness of what actually are you doing to add or take away from the levels of safety. And every team can be a little different. Like whatever we just came up with, that list, that might be working for us personally. Other teams might have a different kinds of lists, but then you can start having the team do an exercise to figure out where do they fall into in these different kind of the feedback that is important for this specific team. Okay, question real quick. Resources for ethnography for interview skills? Yes. Oh, I don't have a good resource. I worked with one personally together, but I'll ask her. I'll post it, and maybe we can find a way to get that up somewhere. I'll work with Heidi. Maybe we can post it on the website.
Yeah, totally. We could post it on Coaching Agile Journeys site.
Yeah, the metaphor she used was like, envision like there's a boat on the dock, and you're going to go with that person on a boat, and you're taking them off the dock. Like the dock is like the normal real world, and you take the person off on this boat onto sea. You're isolated now with this person. You're together with this person very in a way where conversations come up that go then now to the deeper levels of the deck. Like on the boat, you get to the lower deck of the boat, and you discover really deep things of this person, and then work through some of the core issues. A lot of stuff oftentimes is stuff that happens in their private lives that are brought into the workspace. So, and I don't go too much into this space because it's a little bit more into the psychology kind of field, and I'm just not fully expert on that level. So I take that very loosely and carefully, I should say, because it can be very tricky. Okay, we got to speed up a little bit. So let's see. Let's go on. Now, more intervention options. Here's a whole list of things that I do or have done in the past. On the top left, there is stuff you're more familiar with on a team level. So is your team mission defined? Are you guys aligned on what you're actually doing? Is the product vision kind of clear? Are success metrics defined? Is the division of responsibilities clear? Do you have like teamwork agreements? Do you have a team trust canvas? Those kind of things are mechanics that can help just set the regular stage at what a highly functioning Agile team should be focusing on. Then below on the left is like communications training that I highly recommend any organization to put some budget behind, because if people can start talking in better ways with each other, then this will help team safety altogether as well. So I've listed here a few. Radical Candor, check that out. There's a website for that, also out of Google. And that's like, how do you give constructive feedback without doing it in a way that's not effective? Because you can be very empathetic, but it's very ineffective because you're too soft in a way. You're too, I forgot what they use in the book, but yeah, it's not an effective way to communicate feedback. And then on the right side, these are more like agile coaching kind of techniques. In some ways, so meditation in general is, I highly recommend, super important. There's a lot of science to back that up, how meditation has impacted, can impact your wiring of your brain. And if you think about search inside yourself out of Google, there's a book and there's a whole conference series and seminars to go to. There's actually, they put people under the scanners and see how the brain actually starts changing over time the more meditation you do. Exercise is an active listening. So active listening is like being fully present with somebody when they talk to you. Like, don't be distracted by writing emails on the side or on your phone and stuff. Like, be fully present, be able to actually mirror back what the person told you to confirm that you actually understood what they're talking about. Those are like exercises you want to do that also helps build up team safety. Stuff like Elmo. Do you guys know Elmo? Anybody? I see, yeah, a few heads, nods, and up. Yeah,
Definitely.
Elmo, like the stuffed animal from the Sesame Street, stands for enough. Let's move on. So if somebody just keeps rambling, but we should probably move on, then you can gently throw that in. It's a very safe way to get things moving again. Let's see what else. For like team exercise or team building, I like the 2 truths, 1 lie. So you have to guess what everyone writes 2 truths on a individual index cards, and then 1 lie on the index card. And then they pitch their idea, and you have to guess which one is the lie and which ones are the truths. And that creates a great kind of thing that's non-work related, usually, because it has to do with what you've done in the past in your life or something like that, or who you've met before. So it creates a good kind of action on the team level. And the last one I like too, like non-work related challenges where the team has to come together and solve a puzzle of some sort. They have to work together to figure out how to communicate, how to work together, and it's totally non-work related. That's a cool thing. And the escape rooms is a popular one that we have here in Los Angeles a lot. So look into those things. There's a lot of activities you can do. Coaching tip real quick. I always tell people, like, okay, look what you can do to help the team the team safety levels. Not what should anybody else do, like not what should Michael do or what should Evelina do. Like, don't do that. Look about what yourself, like how can you add or take, what are you doing that's damaging towards the team safety levels, and stop doing those things. Or what can you do or start doing that actually contributes to team safety levels. If you've done the exercise that I mapped out before with the team, there's a whole bunch of information what adds to team safety. So just kind of like start doing those things. That would be very helpful. So look for yourself. That's how I always phrase it. I think that completes the cycle. One more time. Now, I have these fancy cards. If you have a co-located team, that's excellent, because then you can have more fun. You can play stuff on a very physical way. If you don't have these fancy cards, you don't need them. You can just use a pencil and index cards, create your own. It's 1 through 5. It's not very complicated. You can reuse them for other questions too. I just use them for this one question of how safe do people feel in the team space. Use a pencil, not a Sharpie, because Sharpie might go through the index cards and you can see it. That would violate the safe facilitation. So make sure it's a pencil. Teamsafety.check.org. That's a website I'm hosting with my colleague. We just throw all the learnings we have that we gather here, and I'll continue posting stuff there if you want to check that out. Okay, do we have any more questions? Let's see. What was the tool you mentioned at the beginning? Mural. Yeah, Mural. It used to be LY. Now it's .com, I think. It's from, I think, Jeff. What's his name? From User Story Mapping, the book. I have it here, actually. Hold on.
Jeff Patton?
Jeff Patton, yeah. This book, if you know this. He I think he's behind the mural tool. He actually
posted it in the chat.
Yeah. Oh, .co. Okay, cool. Yeah, it's not a free tool. So if you have a lot of teams to work with, then your organization needs to be careful a little bit about the costs that come with that. But I worked on like pilot teams before, and that was excellent. I use the team for the tool for story mapping as well, and all kinds of brainstorming activities and retrospectives and all that stuff. It's great if you have a distributed team to really dive into that stuff. Free for a month, yeah. If you want to get started, you can use it. More questions? Let's see. And we had a question earlier. I didn't know if that got answered now that we went through the whole flow. I think it was when people are on a 5 and they feel very safe to speak. I forgot exactly how it was phrased. Did we cover that? Or other questions? Anything we still want to talk about?
Yeah, we got 3 minutes, Harold. You know, there's one that comes up, and it's probably related to that, and it's those. You know, you do have that extrovert introvert thing, and then on top of the extrovert thing, you have what most people would refer to as those strong type A personalities, and with lack of emotional intelligence, that self-awareness fact where they have a tendency to be very boisterous, to almost command, and in some cases get loud, and I've seen it in both genders of men and women have an alpha personality where they're very controlling, and it may just be them that's strong, that's making the rest of the team not feel so safe, and they may play a higher role. They may be like a dev lead, or it may be a manager that's impacting the team safety itself. How do you raise awareness and help start moving that in the right direction?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and I think that happens quite a bit, especially when people have like authority or something else, and then it can be a very, very tricky situation. But what I would do is like if it's a really like toxic almost environment, I would try to do how the team can do exercises that open up who the people really are, find connections with the people, find empathies for one another of who the people are. That person might just be the way he is or she is, and just might never change. So that's totally fine. So it's like, okay, let's just see that person of who he is and how he is. And we can always challenge any kind of opinion we have about the product or process and stuff. The whole team can chime in on that. And I think the Agile coaches can help support or facilitate that conversation to make sure that everyone's voice is heard. But I would definitely argue that if people who don't want to change won't change, right? If they don't, so let's learn how to work with these people. Let's find exercises. Let's find way to be compassionate with one another, and find that kind of that team language that works. Even though one person might be really harsh and aggressive, say, okay, look, he's the harsh and aggressive kind. That's cool. So let's just work with that somehow. Let's just accept for that person of who he is or she is, and not try to change that person if that's not going to happen. So let's not fight a battle we can't win, essentially, right? That's not going to work.
Well, thank you very much for joining us today, Harold. This was an amazing, amazing presentation. This is huge, I think, no matter where anybody works. And thanks everyone for joining us. I do want to point out that next month in May, we're going to have like basically 2 series. One going to be a cocktail session, we call it, where a bunch of us join up, and we're going to spin up a conversation about Agile people are disruptive to Agile progress. And you may have seen it and may experience in your work, but us as Agilists, you know, we are kind of shepherding Agile and shepherding the movement, and we should have good, strong emotional intelligence and self-awareness. And every now and then you'll find that people attack other people's ideas, whether it be on LinkedIn, whether it be on Twitter, whether it be in your own environment. I've watched two Agilists, whether they're Scrum Masters or Agile coaches, go head to head, but not in a healthy conversation way. That's not the right way to do this. My way kind of relates to what Harald just talked about here, but within our own community. And I think we should talk about that. It's like a pink elephant in the room to our own community, and find ways we could help with that, because we're doing ourselves some justice by doing that. So that's going to be on May 10th, and it's going to be at noon Eastern Standard Time. And then on May 23rd, we have Jay Packlick coming to talk, and his is going to be on overcoming immunity to change. And that's a good thing, because a lot of people, when the cheese gets moved, have a really tough time adopting change. So Jay's going to present some Agile enterprise tips and some exploratory stuff that we can work with there. So we're already 2 minutes over. I don't want to hold anybody up. Thank you very much, Harald. Thanks, everybody, for joining us, and I hope everyone has a really great day or evening ahead.
Thanks, Harald, and everybody for joining.
Thanks for having me. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Bye. Thank you.